we got to record an emergency session right now regarding Stefon Diggs getting traded away from Buffalo. This is like the cherry on top of one of the craziest off seasons we've ever seen in the NFL. CJ Stroud now has probably, I want to say, golly, who has a better wide receiver trio than the Houston right now?
I'm really interested to see who ends up being the leading receiver here on this team.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
May be the greatest catch I've ever seen.
We got to record an emergency session right now regarding Stefon Diggs getting traded away from Buffalo. This is like the cherry on top of one of the craziest off seasons we've ever seen in the NFL. Diggs has been such a long time, staple here in regards to reception percent. I mean, when you think about the terminology, we tell you who's good before they're good. This is the guy, It's like the least surprised person in regards to Stefon Diggs having a monster blow up year in his first year in Buffalo. That would be Matt Harmon. He knew this was coming. You know what I'm saying? So anyways, here we are. He gets traded away. And I got to be honest with you, I'm baffled by the move. Buffalo trades this guy for a second-round pick and some other spare parts, but essentially they get a second-round pick. They have to eat a $30 million cap hit, too. It's like, what are we doing out here? And in specifically from a team build standpoint, I mean, Jesus Christ, like, I get that Kansas City just won a Super Bowl with a similar formula of, hey, we're going to invest in quarterback and the wide receivers can go to hell. But generally, man, this isn't Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid we got working over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is Buffalo doing, brother? I just don't get it.
Well, first of all, and I'm sure people don't want me to be like, let's take a look back at the history of this situation. We want to talk about the current situation that's unfolding right now, right? With this trade. But you said it, like, him arriving in Buffalo and becoming the player statistically that he was in Buffalo was it was such a win, obviously, for reception perception. But, like,
yep.
When writing the trade up for Yahoo today, I couldn't help but, like, take a couple paragraphs, or at least a paragraph, to say, like, this is, like, almost kind of mourn the end of what's been such a dynamic duo. Just unbelievable separator, on-time rhythm route runner, but a guy that, like, because he's such a good route runner, Josh Allen, he's told me this before, Josh Allen has told me this, that, like, I don't care about, like, things like route depth or play design when it comes to Diggs. Like, I'm cool with him just, if he wants to improv and get open, like, I will find him. So Josh Allen becomes that player with Stefon Diggs because Stefon Diggs is that good. And Josh Allen, because he is a guy that is fearless and willing to play off script, like I just mentioned, but also fire the ball all over the field and is just, it will aggressively lock on to this guy in Stefon Diggs. He is able to elevate the kind of the reputation of Stefon Diggs. Even though I think the play was on film all along of, like, a true elite number one receiver, Allen's play also elevates his resume. So they were, like, perfectly timed for each other, right in the right moment in both of their career trajectories where they needed each other, which almost kind of makes it, I think, really sad the way this situation has ended. Put all the off-field stuff aside, where clearly there was an untenable situation between player and team, I think, at this point. That's why they're taking a $31 million dead cap hit to get Diggs off the roster. There's clearly something there. I also think you watch him play last year, and you see a guy that is still good, but not elite in terms of getting separation, especially down the field. That's where you're going to notice the biggest drop-off in terms of reception perception. The success rate down the field. 9 routes, corner routes, that type of stuff. That's where the biggest drop-off is for Diggs from his previous elite seasons to, like, what I'm saying. And by the way, this is something that I think is important to say too, James, is that there's no statistically significant trend between the first half and the back half of the season. Like, when I'm charting games in the first half and the second half, there's
just
not,
about to ask you that.
Honestly, if you really wanted to, like, parse out the data and split the data,
okay,
it's really more opponent based. When he goes up against the Jaguars or the damn Giants or whatever, sure, he's getting a lot of really good separation. When he's going up against teams that are maybe a little better, or the Chargers, right? The Chargers, back half of the season, he's getting open against the damn Chargers. But like the Jets, even in week 1, he's having a little bit of trouble there. So that's kind of where I would say that. And he's still productive in some of those games, and a lot of that is like some contested catch situations. So I don't know. That's kind of the state of the state with Stefon Diggs right now. Is I think he is definitely a guy that is a declining player. He's he's 30, he'd be 30 years old. Like that's not surprising, but I'm not saying he's about to fall off a cliff. But I do think that we're looking at a diminished version of the player, especially down the field.
Look, his role on this Buffalo Bills team was to just absolutely dominate the intermediate and the deeper parts of the field. Now, I think you can make a strong case that, he did not get the help that he needed in terms of clear out routes or whatever it might have been from Gabe Davis. But regardless, his effectiveness, I think, downfield certainly did not look very good, especially in the back half. Now you talk about some of these high variance plays. Listen, that's going to happen. And by the way, that happened, last year in 2021. So those plays are still on the table. It's not as if Diggs and Allen, it's not as if any player is connecting on these high variance plays at 100% clip. So I get it. But I think that's also kind of sort of baked into the type of plays that we're talking about. So now in that intermediate area of the field, that's where I would say Diggs to me was a truly special player. I mean, you couldn't guard this guy, 10 to 15 yards out in his absolute peak form. What did you find in regards to that for Stefon Diggs?
Yeah, and I think that's actually a really good note here, because if you look at just the routes that he's running, again, I'm not 100% done with the sample, but it's pretty conclusive here. 46.4% of his routes that I charted were either curls or slants. A lot of short stuff for Stefon Diggs.
Yeah.
By the way, great success rates on those routes. Okay, so he's actually still that's where he's still getting open, kind of short underneath, stuff like that. He's not really running a lot of dig routes. The out route rate is relatively high. The success rate is solid there, but that's sort of what's interesting there is just you still see him able to uncover, uncork, and like he's still a great route runner. He still sets guys up really well. It's just I think he's just maybe like a step slower. But all this being said, like about where Diggs is as a player, I still think it's a great trade for Houston, right? Because
oh my God, home run. Are you kidding me? It's an absolute slam dunk.
It's a fake news future second round pick. I'm being facetious when I say that. I only mean that fake news draft picks when it comes to dynasty rookie drafts. And like people ask in the Discord, like, would you trade a 2025 first? Like that doesn't exist to me. 2025 dynasty rookie picks. I don't care.
Exactly.
Who cares? Right. You can get that pick back at some point. Doesn't even matter. But no, in the NFL draft, a little bit different. But anyway, so second round pick, in the future, fine trade for them. They give up a few other picks too, or they get a few picks back actually on the Diggs trade. So again, they really got him at a discount here, probably because of the salary and everything like that. There's no question. But Keenan Allen's the one that let this one slip, right? When he was giving his introductory press conference with the Chicago Bears, he had let it slip that it was the Jets and the Texans were the other teams that were close to him. And I think I even said at the time, I think it was on this show, that to me signals that Houston's looking for another receiver, but they're not just looking for any receiver, right? That is what they're getting in Stefon Diggs. Like I said, if he's not a deep threat for this team, could he not just be, and like everybody that's playing, like wants to talk about fantasy football is going to hate when I say this, but just from your NFL perspective, could he not just be like a souped up version of what Robert Woods was for them last year, where he's like an underneath guy? He mostly plays out of the slot. Because his slot work was up last year at times, especially late in the year. His work off the line of scrimmage and his reception sample is higher than it was in previous seasons. So I think maybe we could see him and Tank Dell kind of rotate between flanker slot and bring two very different dimensions to both of those positions. Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about here with Houston is that I think they had a very specific target in mind of what they wanted out of that position. They wanted a veteran separation route runner. I still think that's the player they're getting with Stefon Diggs, even if he's not the elite wide receiver one that he used to be.
Okay, so let's break this down from a team perspective. Buffalo Bills go from having a really good receiver room because, again, you were super gassed up about Curtis Samuel in there teaming up with Stefon Diggs. Okay, not the case. They get a second-round pick. It's a deep wide receiver class, so you would assume at some point they're going to address wide receiver. Maybe they do it in the first round. Maybe they do it in the first and second round. I don't know. They have so many team needs, though, Buffalo, man. It's just, especially on the defensive side of the football, they got a defensive-minded head coach. Brother, I am so worried about Josh Allen. I don't know. But because they go from, and we just did this episode, Matt, we talked about disaster-level wide receiver rooms. The Buffalo Bills are now in that conversation. I don't care how much you like Curtis Samuel, bro. If he is your number one wide receiver at this point, you're in trouble. Oh, my goodness. Buffalo Bills entering the conversation in terms of worst wide receiver rooms in the NFL. Can I flip over to the Houston side of this whole equation, though? You hinted at it just a little bit, but this now wide receiver trio, we don't totally know what the health status is for Tank Dell, but we did see that when healthy and good, man, this offense is humming. So CJ Stroud now has probably, I want to say, golly, who has a better wide receiver trio than Houston right now?
Yeah.
I'm really at a loss there. I think it's pretty clear that they've got the best wide receiver. Well, it depends on what Chicago does. They've got a pretty good room too. But just three up, three down, man. Like Houston's is right there, top of the league in terms of best trio wide receivers in the NFL. You throw Dalton Schultz in the mix. I'm not a big Dalton Schultz guy, but I mean, the guy can clearly play a little bit. You know what I mean? So, the contract doesn't make any sense to me, but I mean, it's a great pass catching option there for Houston. It's an embarrassment of riches for a second-year player in CJ Stroud.
Oh, yeah, and it's funny, too, right? Like, the whole talking point with Diggs is, well, he's going to talk his way out of Buffalo, or he wants out of Buffalo. Well, he's not going to go anywhere else to get a better quarterback. Well, I mean, CJ Stroud's not better than Josh Allen right now, but
Right.
everything from his rookie year
right.
did show he
Correct.
could, at the very least, join the elite tier, right? Like, be one of, like, a guy with a seat at the table, right? In terms of the elite quarterbacks. Everything about his rookie year showed he could be that. So, like, that's going to end up being, I think, a good move for Diggs' career, playing with, especially if we're talking about Diggs maybe transitioning to, like, kind of, like, lower average depth of target, maybe shorter route tree type of role. Like, I think he has a game that should age well in terms of him continuing to be productive. I'm really interested to see who ends up being the leading receiver here on this team. And I am going into it based on the film with eyes wide open, like, and kind of like, I think anything could happen here. Because if Diggs was still Diggs, like at the peak of his game, I'd say, like,
no doubt, right?
Sorry about it, Tank Dell. Sorry about it, Nico. This
yeah.
guy's getting 150 targets and, like, ain't nothing you can do about it. But I think because Diggs is maybe a slightly declining player, I think Nico Collins can still lead this team in targets. Now, Tank Dell is tough because he's a guy that's he's coming off an injury, and I just don't want to get in a position where, hey, look at his workout videos on Instagram, like he's fine. Okay, like I think injury optimism generally is the worst bet you can make. Guys coming off, like especially early on in the season, and like. I tell you what, if Houston thought like Tank Dell was going to be no question about it, set it and forget it, it's all going to be good, like and he's healthy coming into the year and he's just going to walk right back into being a top flight receiver, they're not making this trade. They're not trying to.
Yeah, do they make it? I don't think they make this move, right?
They're not sniffing around Keenan Allen, right? Like they're just, hey, we got our 1-2 receivers and we're all good. And I think Tank Dell's really good, but he's also 170 pounds and he's coming off a serious injury, and he's a guy that got there were other times he took these massive hits. Like, can you count on him to stay healthy? I think these guys are all three great players, and like I'm kind of ready to believe anything in terms of you tell me this guy leads the team in receiving yards, this guy leads the team in receiving yards. I could really see it from any of these three players, but no question about it. It's like an embarrassment of riches for CJ Stroud, which is what you can do. You get the quarterback on the rookie contract, baby. You go throw money around.
Nico Collins, obviously an emerging player here. He's young. He's a stud. And again, you found some really, really nice things in regards to his game last year coming into this year as well, right? Okay, my question is, I know he has been the unquestioned X receiver here for the Houston Texans, Matt. Does that still hold up with Stefon Diggs? Because I think that if you want to maximize this trade and you want to maximize the value and truly keep Diggs happy and, keep the vibes up with Diggs, I think you want him kind of sort of everywhere, right? Like, yeah, you can give him some slot reps, but he's got to get out there and play X receiver too. He can't just be a flanker slot guy. In my opinion, I don't think that's going to work for both Houston and for Stefon Diggs, for him to be, a secondary player that, and look, I get it. You can draw up plays for flanker slots all day long, but I do think that he needs to run some big boy routes on the outside as an outside X receiver. Am I wrong in that?
No, I think he'll run a lot of these like hitches and comebacks and stuff like that in this offense as the ISO receiver. And you'll see.
So the question then becomes, Matt, can Nico slide and maybe not play slot, but will he be comfortable playing off the line and being a flanker guy too?
I think so. And a lot of those plays, like on these big over routes and crossing routes and stuff like that, especially early in the season when him and Tank Dell were both healthy, some of the best plays and best route combinations in the world are you've got, Tank Dell on the line in the slot, and then Nico's outside but off the ball, and like we're working dagger or like, Tank Dell's running an out-breaking route, and then Nico's kind of running an in-breaking route, or Tank Dell on these corner routes, and then, Nico's kind of cutting under it. Those were some deadly plays to both Tank Dell and Nico Collins last year. Now, I think you have a guy that Stefon Diggs on the other side of the field, you can have him like running a backside curl route or something like that. I don't think Diggs is threatening you vertically as a pure outside receiver anymore, but like, he's running curl routes and comebacks, and he's getting open on those routes. He still has that timing, technique, rhythm in his route running to be in the right place at the right time. So depending on the defensive look, if it's not there over the middle and it's also not there in the outside for CJ Stroud to either Tank Dell or Nico Collins, you have confidence now. You're coming on the backside to one of the best route runners of the last 10 years. So I definitely think there's going to be times where these guys are all rotating around. Like nobody comes out there and just plays X receiver unless you're like Mike Williams or George Pickens or something. But even George Pickens, I'm being a little facetious there. So I think we'll see. And because Diggs already was at a point where he's playing both positions, but he was moving primarily to like a flanker role last year. So I think you'll see all three of these guys move around primarily with Tank Dell being slot and flanker, and then sometimes you'll see when Tank's in the slot, you can see Nico at flanker or X, and then vice versa with Diggs.